they always said I'm wrong, but what they doing today? I think they want me gone, but I ain't going away. They told me I was wrong, but look at my ass today. Da 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 da.
Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly. This is The Real Sports Talk. Thank you for tuning in. Last night, Kobe Bryant became the 5th player of all time to join the 30,000 points club. That is impressive, and I certainly give Kobe Bryant his props. He also became the youngest to join this list. One thing I do want to point out, though, and this video, I'm going to point out truth. I'm not pointing out anything because of personal agendas or anything. I'm going to draw a lot of positive things, and then I'm going to also draw the side that is not brought into the light by many media sources that I think needs to be brought in light, and that is some of the things that Kobe Bryant doesn't do as well that we usually don't hear about if you watch Sports Center or one of those type of programs where they really don't go in depth enough, in my opinion. Kobe Bryant was the youngest, but he was actually out of the top 5. It took him the most games. Now, I'm not doing this to take away from what Kobe Bryant did, but it needs to be put into perspective. Wilt Chamberlain, it took him 941 games. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it took 1,101 games. Michael Jordan, it took 960 games. Karl Malone, it took 1,152. And Kobe Bryant, it took 1,180. Out of the people on that list, I sit back, and this morning we heard people say, and I was listening to Mike and Mike this morning, and then it was a discussion point wherever you went, is Kobe Bryant a top 5 player of all time? I've heard different people tell me Kobe Bryant's a top 5. I've heard people tell me he's the greatest player of all time. I've heard people say he's top 10, top 15, not even top 20, he's overrated, whatever. I've heard people say everything in the book about Kobe Bryant. Now, most people fall in that list of saying right around top 5. I fall a little lower than that, but I'm going to explain why. If you look at the people in the top 5, let's look at the accomplishments that they have, because people will say, oh, well, Kobe Bryant's got 5 rings, he's in the top 5. But then you go through and you look at what the accomplishments of these people in the top 5 are, and you say, well, wait, let's take a step back. Wilt Chamberlain has 2 titles and 4 MVPs. Regular season MVPs, that is. Kobe Bryant has 1 MVP and 5 titles. I think that, and this is my opinion, I think that regular season MVPs tell me a lot more about what the player did over the course of that season. Obviously, your goal as a player is to win the championships, but when we're talking about individual players and what they did in their career, to me, MVPs mean a little bit more. Now, before I go through comparing to the rest, the one thing I would like to say is there were other years like 2002, 2003, and 2004, 2005 where you could certainly make the case that Kobe Bryant should have won the MVP. That being said, the year that he actually did, you could have made a decent case that Steve Nash could have won his 3rd straight MVP that year because he had a very impressive season for the Suns. So there's a lot to be discussed there. Michael Jordan has 5 MVPs and 6 rings. So people like to say, well, Kobe Bryant's got 1 more ring and then he's with Michael Jordan. Not really. Not really. Karl Malone has 2 MVPs and 0 finals. I think when I go through that list and I look down those 5 names, Kobe Bryant is the 4th best out of those guys. Karl Malone had a great career. I have him at 5. I have Michael Jordan 1st, Kareem 2nd, and Wilt Chamberlain 3rd. And then I really go through and I think about, we like to discuss how good Kobe Bryant is, and he certainly is. But I begin to sit back and think, we're just saying, is he top 5? But what about all the other people who aren't being taken into account? We just skip to, is Kobe as good as Jordan? But we don't discuss the other people. This list is a list of people who have scored, but there's other parts of the game that other players in history have succeeded at. In a lot of cases, these players have succeeded better at. I think it would be unfair to try and make a top 5 list without looking at the names Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Jerry West, LeBron James, Oscar Robinson, Bill Russell, Kevin Garnett. And maybe, I certainly don't think all those players are better than Kobe Bryant. I don't think most of those players have had better careers than Kobe Bryant. But And I don't think most of those players you can even make a great case for top 5. But what you can make a case for, I think, is that some of them are better than Kobe Bryant. You know, there is more than scoring. I understand that people like that scoring is the most interesting part of the game, but when people say, well, if he's on this list, he's got to be top 5. I had a few people tell me that today. No. You know, you play a whole game. What LeBron James got so much credit for last year in the playoffs was his ability to pass, his ability to make his teammates successful. What won them Game 5 of that NBA Finals was because LeBron James was penetrating and kicking, and guys like Mike Miller and other players on the Heat were hitting big threes. You know, you need more. There's a defensive aspect to the game. And I'm not saying that any of these players did any one thing better. I'm not going to go through each player and compare, but it's just kind of something to think about. And then there's the championship argument that people like to constantly use. And when you talk about Kobe Bryant, 5 championships. If you want to compare that to LeBron James, and that's something that Kobe versus LeBron, I'm not on either side. I like both the guys a lot. When people would try and put down LeBron and say Kobe's 5 rings. But when you're talking about Kobe being on a list with some of these guys, well, you're talking about other guys. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has 6 titles. Michael Jordan has 6 titles. Magic has a ton of titles. Bird has a ton. Shaq has 4. I mean, Tim Duncan's got 3. Hakeem's got 2. Jerry West has a ton. Bill Russell's got 11, for Christ's sake. Robert Horry's got 7. If you want to just singularly go by championships, that's not the way to go. And the people who use that argument, what they fail to understand, and they clearly have never played on a team that won a championship. They might have played sports, but they don't understand that every single player, down to the last person on that roster, on a championship team, makes some sort of impact to the team. Whether it's in practices, getting the players prepared, whether it's stepping into games and maybe only having 1 or 2 big plays the entire season, but those big plays are what helps you get there. Kobe Bryant did not singularly win 5 championships. Shaq was there for the first 3. Shaq is one of the top 10 players of all time. Shaq has 4 championships as well. Shaq has a few MVPs. So Kobe Bryant did not singularly win those. And then people say, well, after that, Kobe Bryant won 2 alone. No, he really didn't. After that, he was, I guess, as close to as alone as you could say when the Kwame Brown era was going on in LA. That was when Kobe Bryant was scoring 35 a game, but they certainly were not winning. They were an 8th seed in the Western Conference, and it was not a formula that was successful because he didn't have the proper players around him. And it's not a negative thing that that's how it was, but when people say that he won them by himself, no. After that, they brought back Derek Fisher, they got Lamar Odom, they got Pau Gasol. I mean, they put together a very good team around Kobe Bryant. So you can't say that even these last 2, he was certainly the best player on those. He won the Finals MVP for both of them. Although I still think Pau Gasol had a pretty good case to win Finals MVP against the Celtics, but that's just my opinion. He won a championship as the best player, but he alone did not win the championship. He wasn't the only one that got a ring for that season. He was the best player, but he was not the only player who made an impact. And we get so caught up in, well, how many championships did he win? And then when we realize that people are close, well, he won this amount alone. No. We're in an NBA era right now where there's a few superstar teams that have teamed up a few different superstars. But one thing that people fail to realize about the histories of the NBA is that pretty much all these great stars that we're looking at on these lists, they had superstars around them, or stars around them. Bird had Parrish. Magic had Kareem. Tim Duncan's had Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, David Robinson. Shaq's had Kobe, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James. I mean, he didn't win a championship with them, but that's some of the players that he's played with. Jerry West played on some great Lakers teams. Kevin Garnett, when he won his championship with the Boston Celtics, Ray Allen and Paul Pierce were still playing at a very high level. Rajon Rondo was coming into his own. When you look at all these guys, no one wins championships alone. That's not how it works in the NBA. And it was a negative thing to say when LeBron teamed up with Wade and we started seeing a couple other superstars, the Knicks teamed up, and we started saying, well, because Kobe stayed in LA and he didn't go join a different team, he won it on his own. No, he really didn't. And if you're going to use the negative excuse against a guy like LeBron James that he won one with Wade, well then, and that doesn't count or something like that, which I've heard NBA fans tell me, then you can't count Kobe Bryant's first 3 championships because he was playing with another great player. You see how stupid that sounds? So, championships, and I know I got off topic a little bit, but championships are kind of the icing on the cake. They're certainly not the first thing you go to an argument. An argument, the first things I look at are how many points did they score, what type of defense did they play, what type of passers were they, what percentage did they shoot from the field, 3-point, foul shots. How did they perform in the playoffs certainly does come into the equation, but it's not the first thing, and it's not the only thing. And quite honestly, just because you won championships does not mean that you had your best seasons when you won those championships. Kobe Bryant had a few years where Kobe Bryant's best overall individual seasons were years that the Lakers were an 8th seed and barely into the playoffs. The years that Kobe Bryant won some titles early on, those weren't his best seasons, and there were games in the playoffs where he struggled. And that's just what I'm trying to point out here, is that there is more than just the championship argument. And there's also more than just he's the most determined player I've ever seen. That is something you hear used so much. And that's an actual reason to put someone in the top 5. I mean, fans that do that are just complete idiots. He was the most determined player out there because he makes that face. And I'm not saying Kobe Bryant has worked his ass off to still be playing at the level that he is at age 34. He's been playing since I was 1 year old. I mean, you think about the class that he came in. He came with Allen Iverson, who's been out of the NBA for a few years. He came in, was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, who haven't been in existence for over 10 years now. I mean, it's impressive, the longevity that Kobe Bryant has been able to succeed, or achieve, I should say. It's incredible. So I'm not taking away from the fact that he works very hard, but for someone to say he's the most motivated player of all time, first of all, if you want to go just strictly by facial expressions, I tend to think Michael Jordan would be, and by who talks the best game. But the reality is that all these guys work this hard. All these guys work in the same way that Kobe Bryant was. I don't think it's fair to say that guys like Oscar Robertson, because a lot of us didn't see him play live, or Larry Bird, or Magic Johnson, or Hakeem, Shaq, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Bill Russell, that these guys didn't work just as hard to win a championship. I don't think that that's a fair argument. I don't think it's fair to them. And Kobe Bryant has a tremendous work ethic. It's not a secret. It's not. I love how much Kobe Bryant wants to win, and that's what you want to see in your athletes. But it's really not an argument when you're talking about is Kobe Bryant top 5 of all time. Now, greatest Laker of all time is interesting because I've had this debate with a lot of people, and you know what I've kind of come to the conclusion of? Kobe Bryant's going to play 1 or 2 more years, at least, with the Lakers at a very high level. He may go longer. He says he's going to retire after next year. I have a tough time believing that, but maybe he actually does. In terms of longevity, Kobe Bryant may be the greatest Laker of all time. Magic Johnson and Shaq have come out and said he's the greatest Laker of all time. And quite honestly, I don't know why they wouldn't. What do they have to gain out of saying, nah, I'm the greatest player, I'm the greatest Laker of all time? Even if Magic Johnson was asked about greatest player of all time, let's take Michael Jordan out of the equation. Let's just say Magic Johnson was the guy that we looked at, and we said that Magic Johnson was the greatest player of all time. Let's just say we did that. and Magic Johnson was asked after his career, do you think Kobe Bryant's the greatest player of all time? Why would Magic Johnson make an issue? I think Michael Jordan, when he's been asked that, Michael Jordan will straight up tell you, because I think he certainly has respect for Kobe Bryant, but he also understands the type of work that he put in, and Michael Jordan is very cautious of his legacy. He wants to be respected. He wants to still be on his own level, his own pedestal, which in my opinion he is. But he wants to make sure that every generation, especially now that we're seeing more and more people that didn't watch any of Michael Jordan's career, just come out and say, well, Kobe Bryant's the greatest player of all time. So, I don't think that Magic Johnson would use that argument, but let's go back to the greatest Laker of all time. In terms of longevity, he may be, but then you go through the other guys that are candidates. Magic Johnson's career was cut short because of HIV. Magic Johnson would have had a lot more great years and very well could have been the greatest player of all time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had some tremendous years with the Bucks. He won one of his titles there, won a few MVPs, tremendous player with the Milwaukee Bucks, and then spent the rest of his career with the Lakers. Wilt Chamberlain spent a decent amount of his career, most of his career, with the Philadelphia Warriors and Philadelphia 76ers franchise. He had... his prime was probably there. He won his championships with the Lakers, but his best overall days of his career were in Philadelphia. Shaq spent a very good portion of his career. He spent in Orlando, and then he spent in Miami. And then, yes, at the end, he had Cleveland, Phoenix, and Boston, which really didn't add to his legacy much. It was just he didn't want to retire at that point. But what you really take out of Shaq is Orlando, L.A., in Miami. Those were the three places where he really made his name. Those were the three places where he won titles. And also, I think that all those guys individually had better careers than Kobe Bryant altogether. In terms of Lakers, yes, he very well may be the greatest Laker because he's been there the longest, but if you take their entire career numbers, and I understand it's tough to compare three of those guys, and Kareem, Chamberlain, and Shaq, because they're big men, but you can't just say, well, because they're big men, we're not going to put them on the list either. That's not the right thing to do, and I think the name Jerry West needs to be thrown in. The logo, if you want to go by championships, Jerry West is certainly near the top of the discussion, so he would be in that. I talked to one of his former teammates, Kobe Bryant, a few years ago about this very topic. He told me that he thought Kobe Bryant was the greatest player of all time. Here's what he thought about Kobe Bryant's overall legacy. That being said, where do you rank him against guys like Jordan and Kareem? In the all-time list, where would you put Kobe Bryant?
I mean, he's high up there. It's just so hard to put anybody in any pecking order because of positions and different things. But I mean, he's definitely up there, top five. I mean, he's an extremely talented guy. You know, to being able to see that every day consistently, you know, just an amazing thing, and it was also a good learning experience for me as well.
Alright, so that is Josh Powell, his former teammate. He was mostly a bench player. I mean, Josh Powell was not a superstar. Very nice guy, though. Did an interview with him. And he told me that he believed Kobe Bryant was a top 5 player of all time. In the comment section, if you go back and look at this interview, which I did about a year ago now, actually a year and 2 days ago, when I did this, people killed it. There were a few guys that said he played in the game, his opinion is really what matters. Then there were also people that said Josh Powell should never be allowed near a basketball court for saying this again. And then there was what I said, where essentially I said that I don't necessarily agree with what Josh Powell said, and I don't necessarily agree with what Magic Johnson says when he says he's the greatest, or anyone says that he's the top 5 player of all time, anyone that's played with him or against him or was a player. But at the same time, they played, and that's a different perspective, and it's not a perspective that I think you probably do get more of a perspective out of watching someone than playing against them, because when you're playing against them, you have a lot more ill will for them in a lot of cases. In some cases, when you're playing with them, you're going to have so much respect that you can't be very unbiased when you talk about it. So I understand their perspective. I don't think it's the perspective that I usually use, but it's important to add that into there. And I set out to make sure that this was not a one-sided thing where it came off as I was trying to take away from Kobe Bryant's accomplishment, because that's not what the point of this was. The point is that you need to take into account all the other great players in NBA history and what they've done potentially better than Kobe Bryant. Because Kobe Bryant, when you talk about scoring, there is no doubt in my mind that Kobe Bryant is a top 5 scorer of all time. But then you look at how he did it, and he has never shot a great percentage. He has never been an extremely efficient player. He's never really been a player who's been known for dishing in a great amount of assists. He's never been a great rebounder. I mean, he's 6'5". He's not going to be a great rebounder. He's a shooting guard. But then, when you look at some of these other great players that we have in this list, take guys like Oscar Robertson, LeBron James, Kevin Garnett, they're going to fill up the stat sheet even more. And when you can say, well, he plays a different position, so he's going to get more rebounds. But when these guys are scoring the same amount of points, maybe not in Kevin Garnett's case, but let's look at LeBron James. When they're scoring to close the same amount of points, shooting a better percentage, playing better defense through a decent amount of their career, they're probably better at passing. I mean, you understand that, yeah, Kobe Bryant is a tremendous shooter, or a tremendous scorer, I should say, but at the same time, that's not everything. There's other things in his game that certainly Kobe Bryant is very good at all of them. I think Kobe Bryant was a much better defender earlier on in his career than he is now, which, I mean, he's 34 years old. He's been in the NBA for a very long time, so that's to be expected. But you need to people need to understand this, and that's just something that the people don't get anymore, because I didn't watch live, and a lot of the people that I would talk to about this, or people that would be talking about it now, because look, I'm 17 years old, and I didn't get to see most of these guys play. I've gone back and I've watched the history, I've watched them play, because that's something I want to do, but most of the people that will be having these discussions, they haven't done that. Most of the people who did watch them play, that's not fresh in their mind right now. They're not remembering when Magic Johnson came out as a rookie without Kareem and won them the final game of the NBA Finals to win his first title. You know, they don't remember when, you know, just some other great performances. I'm not going to go through every single one of these guys and give you one of their best performances. But my simple point in making this video is a congratulations to Kobe Bryant for achieving 30,000 points in his career. It's an incredible feat. He's a surefire Hall of Famer. But I think after going through this, I didn't necessarily make a top 5. But Kobe Bryant is not a top 5 player. He's not. He might be top 10. I can live with someone saying top 10. But when I say he's not a top 5 and people treat that like it's blasphemous, this is why. I have actually gone through and I've done research. I've looked up facts. I've gone back and watched games. I've watched pretty much all Kobe Bryant's career anyway. But I've gone back and compared that with other players that play now, other players in the past. And he's an extremely good player, but we can't say that because he seems like he has more motivation that means that Kobe Bryant's the greatest player of all time, or he's one of the top 5 players, or because he's been fortunate enough to have pretty solid teams around him for most of his career and be a key cog in winning titles, that means he's the greatest player of all time. Does it help his legacy? Certainly it does. But greatest player of all time or top 5? I don't see it for Kobe Bryant. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Share this video because this is certainly a video that people are going to want to talk about and want to discuss. I think just off the top of my head, the players that I would for sure put above Kobe Bryant are Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Shaq, and Hakeem Olajuwon, and Oscar Robertson. And then there's some other guys like Bill Russell that you can maybe make a case for, like Tim Duncan that you can maybe make a case for. LeBron James is still in his prime, so it's very difficult to assess LeBron versus Kobe in terms of a career aspect. But you get my point. Bottom line, I don't have Kobe in my top 5. Do you guys? Let me know in the section below, and I'll see you guys later.